came out first couple of series.
Hello there, Rip City. It is 3 o'clock. Plenty of sport news to get to. First off, in college football, Oregon dominated Michigan State on Friday, picking up the 31-10 win over Jonathan Smith's Spartans. And now they get to face Ohio State at Autzen Stadium on Saturday. The latest AP polls came out yesterday. Ohio State number 2, Oregon number 3, the first meeting of two top 3 teams inside Autzen Stadium in its history. It's going to be amazing. Get there. Also in Corvallis, Oregon State survived Colorado State in a double overtime thriller, 39-31. Hankerson, 28 carries, 113 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And in Oregon high school sports news today, the OSAA approved girls flag football as an emerging sport. Chris Burkhardt here with Dwight Jaynes. The Rip City Drive starts now. Hello there, Rip City. Welcome into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here filling in for Chad Doing once again today. He is burning those vacation days, Godfather. He's putting me to work.
Yeah, that's the general idea, I think, getting rid of those days before the end of the year.
Yes, he's doing that. It's not even before the end of the year. You see, we don't operate on the traditional calendar year. It's more burning those days before the Blazer season starts and you no longer have days to burn, time to burn them. So did I tell you after last time I can't remember. I told you last time I was filling in how I confused the heck out of my daughters because they're like, why does Dad keep calling Dwight his godfather? Like,
Well,
because he just is. You can't explain it.
it's just a nickname.
Yeah, it's just the way it is, as the song says.
Yes.
But oh my gosh. Also, Dwight, I am a little confused because looking outside, driving in with my window down, if I didn't look at the calendar, I wouldn't have believed anybody if they would have told me it's October 7th and 80 degrees outside. What's going on?
That's pretty incredible, I would say. We'll pay for it later,
Oh,
somewhere
we will.
along the line, won't we?
Yes, I remember last year in the fall, my girls did soccer, at both of them I think it was the second year Peyton did it, and the first year that Brooklyn did it, and it was like every Saturday we were soaked. It was like 30 degrees out. This year they're doing cheer instead. Same time frame, same weekends, and it's been sunny and warm every single day. It's been kind of nice, but just I'm not used to it. It's a little throws me off.
Yeah, it's one of those days where you'd like to be on the golf course.
Yes. I don't like these days though, because you're in winter or whatnot. Like I don't like the whole got to bundle up in the morning because it's still cold.
Oh,
but then
no kidding.
by the afternoon you're sweating because you're too bundled up.
Yeah.
Like I don't like that.
Yeah, the house is cold in the morning when I get up and, turn on the fireplace and let that gas fireplace warm up a room while you're kind of waking up. But you're right, Chris. It's changing of the seasons, but we're lucky still getting a little bit of late summer.
Yes, I have no complaints. Truly, there's some parts of the country going through far worse right now than 80-degree October days. So prayers up to everyone dealing with yet another hurricane getting ready to bear down on the state of Florida.
One too, yeah.
I mean, you have not recovered from the one that happened last week. So very unfortunate stuff there. So I will not complain about the 80-degree days. It just throws the body off a little bit because it definitely feels like it's still September or even August right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Throwing me off. Now let's get to it. You got a bunch of stuff to do tonight. You wouldn't even tell me what you were doing. You told me, nope, tight-lipped, Burkhardt. Not even you can know. I said, after a decade working together, you won't even tell me. He said, nope, not you. So I only got you for an hour today. But don't worry, fan. You still got me for 3. I also am going to have Travis Demers on at 5:20. Talk a little Blazer basketball.
There you go.
Because we do have preseason action coming up, Dwight.
This week.
This week it starts. On Friday.
Are we ready for this?
I don't think so.
I thought.
I don't know. It's yes. The gauntlet is about to happen. You get the preseason games. You got on the road on Friday against the Clippers, and then I believe I think they play again on Sunday in Sacramento. and they have 2 home games before it's all said and done. But it's almost here, Dwight. And what's happening, though? Let's get your thoughts on that, actually, before I go to the NFL, because, I mean, training camp just started. We were all at media day last Monday, right? So a week ago, they were at practice the very next day, and then boom, Robert Williams, hamstring injury. He's being monitored. And then the big one, the Blazer fans are just, oh my gosh, what now? Is Shaden Sharp with a labrum injury is going to be sidelined for what, like 4 weeks now? The injuries they're already coming, and the games haven't even started yet. Dwight, has the tank started this early?
No, I don't think so. No, it hasn't. And I know there must be a frustration level, I think, with Sharp being a young player, as young as he is, and being hurt frequently, to the point where they still haven't had a chance to see him play for an extended period of time in some sort of a responsible role on the team. And I think that's frustrating. Now, Robert Williams, different story. You know, he's a guy who's had injuries throughout his career, and they seem to be recurring injuries. So I don't think that took anybody by complete surprise, and he's only supposed to be out a couple weeks. But the Shaden Sharp injury has to be frustrating because they need to see him play. It's coming up to time where you got to think about extending contracts or making a deal for him or finding another player for that position. What are they going to do with him? And I don't think they still have enough, as Joe Cronin would say, enough data on him to decide where they stand.
Yeah, it's hard to get that data when they're not playing, right?
Yeah, real hard.
Yeah, so I don't understand what's going on there. That's unfortunate. And I think that they really do need Shaden Sharp to be sharp. No pun intended. Like, they need him to be good. This team, I don't think I don't think that they think that Scoot is the lead guy. I don't think he was drafted to be the lead guy personally, because I think they went down the road of having a point guard as your best player. And I've said this so many times, no disrespect to anyone who's played here or on any other team, but you have to have a very, very, very specific team makeup of a point guard as your best player. You look at the history of the NBA, you can count on one hand the teams that won with a point guard as their number one guy, right? You got, the Pistons, the Bad Boys with Isaiah, the Pistons with Chauncey, and then the Warriors with Steph.
Magic Johnson.
There you go. Four teams. And even Magic is a weird one because he's a point guard, but he's like a LeBron James point guard, right? Like, he could play all 5 positions. He like, when people say unicorn, like, Magic was a unicorn. He could do everything.
Well, they also had Kareem also. So they had a superstar who was not a vocal leader, but trust me, was a leader without ever opening his mouth.
Yeah. So the whole point is just you got to have that unique makeup. I don't know where Portland is. So I think you look at the roster and go, okay, I see a guy in Shea who's a big shooting guard. I think he plays, at least he did his rookie year, he plays a little bit like a rookie Tracy McGrady. Maybe you could be built in that mold. That's the type of player you can build around. And then when you get the injuries and you don't even get a chance to, put any binding between your bricks, you're just looking at them, hoping to build something out of it someday. It's frustrating.
Yeah, very. No question about it, Chris.
Very, very frustrating. So that's the start to camp. Haven't even hit a preseason game, and we already have injuries, as Gary says on the YouTube chat. Good thing we have depth.
Yeah, I keep hearing about that. And I think people get a little carried away. Somebody the other day, and I saw it in a tweet, said, we now have the best bench in the league. Yeah, I don't think so.
No, I don't know about that.
A lot of unproven players there on the bench.
Another year of Blazer basketball, Dwight. It's here.
Well, we know what's coming, don't we? I mean, come on, let's be serious here.
Capture the flag, as some people say.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to hear a lot about.
I still struggle with that, though. Maybe it's just the fan in me who wants to see it, because I sit here sometimes, Dwight, and I'm like, okay, we've argued forever to pick a lane, figure out what you're doing. It definitely looks like they've made that decision, but I also look at Jeremy Grant, I look at DeAndre Ayton, I look at Denny Avdia, who's a pretty good player if you paid attention to what he did at Washington, and Robert Williams if he were healthy, Klingon, who's going. You start looking like this on paper. This team looks like a team that could do something, and maybe you move pieces around, bring something in, but that's not what they want to do. They want to move everyone out and go with the. So I get frustrated with that.
No, I understand that. certainly people paying big money for tickets also get a little frustrated with it. It's a tough go. But you've gone down this road for like 4 years in a row now, 3 at least, maybe one more, because this is the best crop of young players coming up throughout that whole time. There are real game changers in this draft. I'm afraid you got to do it one more time.
Well, if you don't capture the flag, you just need to play a different game out on recess, okay? We're going to go play regular tag, go play wall ball, just go play on the playground, capture the flag. It didn't work out. He's going to be good. At least we think, right? I mean,
yeah, but the good thing this year is he's not the only one. There's several other players. I've been told there's 5 guys who would have been the number 1 pick last year in the draft. There's that many guys who could really turn you around.
Yeah.
Really help.
Well, hopefully they can find someone. Hopefully this year, though, what I hope for is if the team isn't going to get a lot of wins, I hope they give us fun basketball, right? I felt like towards the end of the year when DeAndre was kind of getting in his groove and you knew what you were getting out of, like, Tamani had come on, you're getting fun basketball for spurts.
Yeah.
And even if you lose, but at least you give me a reason to want to go to Moda and enjoy the moment and, love this team.
Well, Chauncey wants to run. If they run, it'll be a more exciting brand of basketball, I believe. I always have a skepticism when I hear that from coaches. Nothing against the coaches. It's just difficult to get players to run in an 82-game schedule. It wears off after a while, and you start to see a slowdown.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And even when you talk about the rare teams built around point guards, I think even less so. How many teams run on offense and then are great on the defensive side of the ball? I mean, there's a few, right? But at some point you lose that energy and get exhausted along the way.
Yeah, and the problem is to really play that up-tempo game, you almost have to pressure on defense too. And I think you only get away with that in the NBA if you have a deep, deep bench where you can bring people in and spell your starters because they're given full effort at both ends of the court. So you might have to do platoon substituting at times just to keep your players fresh. And then you have the injury problem with playing that hard all the time. And so it's just a difficult thing to pull up. Besides, players always say they want to run because it means more points, more chance to do things offensively. But when it comes down to it, I always see the coach on the sideline imploring them to run, and it's like they're not running. They're just too tired.
It goes back to Ronnie Coleman, multi-time Mr. Olympia, one of the greatest to ever do it in the bodybuilding industry. He once said, "Everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but ain't nobody want to lift no heavy bleep weight."
That's like Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right. It's pretty true. What about one thing that Chauncey said last week, and I don't know if he talked about it with you and Chad, but he did talk about the Blazers do have kind of obviously a plethora of bigs right now because everyone talked about Ayton and Klingon, and then you talk about if Robert Williams is healthy, and even Chauncey is like, yeah, well, we have WAP. you got Dwap Reith, who was pretty good last year. Yeah. Got a lot of bigs, and so he talked about the possibility of seeing, maybe a Klingon Ayton on the floor together, Dwap Reith, Klingon, or whatever, because of Reith's ability to space the floor. I mean, you think that's viable? You think you can see that actually? I mean, it's one thing to say it at the presser; it's another to actually do it.
Oh, I think it's possible to do that. I do, especially you need to get Klingon a lot of minutes, and I know you don't want to cut Ayton's minutes down too bad. I think it's possible to do that. Now, you do have people are going to say it's going to be difficult on offense because they're both kind of inside players. Obviously, Ayton doesn't shoot threes, but he has a mid-range game. That's what he is, and you can play high-low with him. Put him at the high post, put Klingon at the low post. You can play that way. That's possible, and it would give you a couple of really good goaltenders on defense. And you need shot blockers on that team. I don't think there's any question, Chris. I would like to see it done a little bit, especially when Chauncey decides he's going to go with his own defense. It would be even easier to keep those players close to the basket and not be drawn out by the offense. So
right.
I think it's possible to do, and I think he's a smart enough coach to make that work.
I do think there's ability to get Ayton at the 4 because he does play. He plays that old school power forward a little bit. I mean, everyone thinks of the power forward now as more mobile, spacing the floor a little bit. But look at like LaMarcus Aldridge when he was a power forward in Portland. It was that mid range, that 15-foot jumper, right? And then would eventually lean into the block and put his back to the basket. And then there's people who are like, oh, LaMarcus was a center. Not in Portland, like maybe towards the end, but he was a power forward. Like,
and it's pretty much cliched now. Bigs, if they have the option of playing power forward, they'd much rather defend power forwards than defend big centers. And I think you get beaten up in the low post against the really big, powerful centers. And so I think you see a lot of bigs who would say, yeah, I'll play power forward. Sure. Put me out at the 4. I'll be fine out there. Well, because they don't have to guard those guys inside.
Well, we'll see what happens because the Blazers open up their preseason slate on Friday up in Seattle against the Clippers. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dwight and I are going to talk about Ferris Bueller's Day Off and how it can be used as a metaphor for football. Apparently, I didn't know it until Sunday. Chris Burkhardt here with Dwight Jaynes on Rip City Radio, 620. no breaks over here and on the Rib City Drive. Those of you watching on YouTube, you probably saw Dwight and I making hand motions because we were, describing to each other what this catch by Stephen Kwan. Holy smokes, might have just saved the game on that one, Dwight. That was beautiful.
Great catch by a great outfielder.
They went to a replay of it. Twitter thinks it hits the ground. I just showed Dwight. If you watch it frame by frame, it hits his glove. Doesn't hit the ground.
Yeah.
That's they don't just hand out gold gloves. That's why he went and won one, right?
Yes.
All right. So, Dwight, where does Ferris Bueller's Day Off rank on your all-time favorite movies?
Not one of my all-time favorites.
Come on.
No, come on. It was a good movie, but I've seen a lot of great movies. I know it was a good movie, but
you just don't like Ben Stein.
I love Ben Stein.
Bueller.
I'd like to have won his money in that show.
Right.
Win Ben Stein's money.
Ben Stein's money. Oh, that's funny. But no, hey, I too enjoy Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Not one of my favorites, but it's a classic. People know about it. And we got some audio to play here because apparently that's a metaphor for football now. If you guys didn't pay attention, there was a little bit of a, not a scuffle, but a exchanging of words between Broncos head coach Sean Payton and rookie quarterback Bo Nix after a play where it could have easily been a touchdown had the receiver made the catch. Sean Payton didn't like the fact that perhaps Bo went off script. They got going and what have you. And then Sean Payton was asked about it in the presser, and this was his response.
It's part of the deal. Listen, last year all of a sudden it's just there's still a little bit of Ferris Bueller in this player that we got to get rid of. All right, talking about Bo, and I love him to death. And so sometimes it's my love language. All right?
What do you mean by Ferris Bueller?
Oh, it's just funny.
Yeah, I mean, just personality or? I'm just asking.
Yeah, Ferris was kind of quirky, doing his own thing once in a while. I mean, I don't know. Do you watch the movie? Have you ever seen it? He's still got a little Ferris Bueller in him. I mean, he's got some. We mischievous. Not that, maybe a little bit, kind of subtly. Look, there are times where you send something in, and then I don't want it flipped, and then it gets flipped because and so it's all good. He works his tail off, and I am that way, and so. It just is what it is. And, yeah.
He's not even saying anything.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I've watched the movie. But, I think, it's funny. And that literally, I think, explains the situation that we're just out there with, great competitive intensity and fire. And we can have those conversations and move right back along and score, another few touchdowns. It doesn't bother us. Yeah, I think that movie's funny. I think it's a great movie. I've only seen it a handful of times because it's kind of old, but I think it's good.
All right, there you have it. And it's interesting because Sean Payton it kind of sounds like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar and is trying to make an excuse for But the whole last half of the Sean Payton part that we played, it made no sense.
Well, he's trying to get out of it and at the same time not really say what happened. So he's having to double talk. There's a lot of word salad there where he's not saying anything. And it just, I think he was mad that Bo went off script a little bit. But, in Bo's defense, he's thrown to Troy Franklin, who should have caught that ball. An NFL receiver catches that. Yeah, was it thrown a little bit long? Well, yeah, maybe. I think a lot of quarterbacks, if the receiver catches it, they say, wow, that was a great throw.
Right.
It was perfect, but it went right through his hands. So, in Bo's defense, I think he had a right to come back at the coach there.
Yeah, and then competitive fire. It's bound to happen, right? And I think it is interesting because you see it happen. But what was the quote you found? You brought it to my attention that Drew Brees, who everyone obviously associates with Peyton and the best years of Sean and the Super Bowls in New Orleans. And all that basically said that's what you get. Sean's going to push you, but he respects it when you kind of push back.
Yeah, it sounds like he wants you to push back. And it was ironic that this is exactly the situation. And I think also Bo gained some respect from the other players. It's like, Don't take that stuff off him. You don't have to, come back at him. You don't have to take that kind of garbage from the coach.
Right.
Tell him what happened, and I think he gains a lot with his teammates because they'd like to come back at him once in a while too. But, he may be the only guy on the team that can get away with that because he's a quarterback.
Right. I mean, quarterbacks have that unique relationship.
They have a license for that.
He gets away with saying something to coach that, Troy Franklin won't. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and that's what a leader does. He's going to do that. I'm sure if you go through all the footage that exists in this planet, that you've probably seen Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid go at it at some point, if not on the field, but at practice, right? You've seen Kelsey and Mahomes get into it before, and their relationship's pretty darn good, right? I mean, how many times do you see Tom Brady get into it with his offensive line before, right? It's just heat of the moment stuff sometimes.
It's an emotional game, very emotional game. You have to be emotional to play it even. You have to have that passion. But it shouldn't be overlooked either that Bo had a good game. First half, not so good. But, when it came to be winning time, he was there for him. And I would say it's probably his best game as a pro.
He's getting better, Dwight. He's getting better. That's pretty much all you can ask for. I mean, he didn't look good to start the season, but he went out there and, you can talk about him going off script and whatnot, but 206 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. They beat the Raiders 34-18. You could argue, the Raiders are in shambles, but it's also the NFL. A bad team can beat you on just about any Sunday. You still have to go take care of business. It's really interesting. I was talking with my cousin about this yesterday, watching some football, how it's like, I love the NFL, but I also hate the NFL because the talent gap is so small between the worst players and the best players that you get a close game with Houston and Buffalo, and it's 20-20 in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, on Saturday, where there's a much bigger gap, you're getting the close games in the fourth quarter, 52-49. People are scoring because defenses can't stop them. You're getting upsets left and right. You don't get that in the NFL. Much more buttoned up, so to speak.
Yeah, but this is a funny year for football. I've never seen, I feel like I've never seen as many upsets that are just incredible upsets. I mean, how in the heck does Vanderbilt beat Alabama?
Right.
I'm sorry. I never saw that coming at all.
No.
And I knew it might be a little struggle for Alabama, but they're still going to win by a couple touchdowns. I mean, if that game alone doesn't tell you, don't bet on college football, nothing will.
I wouldn't.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
I love college football for the entertainment factor. I'm not putting my money on it.
The only team I bet on right now is Miami because they are a protected class from the officials. They've got a lot of things going their way. And, man, I stayed up late Saturday night watching that game only to see them totally ignore a targeting on the Cal quarterback that would have changed the outcome of that game. And it was just a shame to see that happen because Cal outplayed Miami for most of the game. So it's 2 weeks in a row now that the replay window has been able to save Miami from defeat.
Yeah, that's something else, saying it. I fell asleep thinking Cal had that one in the bag.
They should have.
Oh.
They couldn't move the football in the fourth quarter.
Well, yeah. College football's something else, okay? It is something else. Speaking of games you should win, Dwight, and why you don't bet on things and things that are sure bets and whatever other, saying you want to throw out there. The game that went down in Corvallis over the weekend, the Beavers, they eked one out against Colorado State, 39-31. It was a double overtime game. They could have lost it at various points, but they didn't, so kudos to them. But at the same time, Dwight, the Beavers are 4-1, and that's great. But Idaho State, meh. Purdue, meh. Colorado State, meh. Yeah. San Diego State, not very good this year either. Their one loss against Oregon, who pretty much beat them from the jump in that game. There wasn't much to it. So then my question to you, the 4-1, maybe not necessarily fool's gold, but maybe wouldn't get too excited because I still feel like there's a lot of holes that this team has to fix.
Well, I agree, Chris. I think people are getting a little carried away with Oregon State's record and not realizing that they're not playing big-time football teams for the most part. And certainly Colorado State is nobody that you should be judging yourself on when you have to use 2 overtimes to beat them at home.
Right.
It didn't make much sense to me. I did not think they were very good in that game. Obviously, they lost Jam Griffin early. That hurt them a little, but they have a good, the kid they use, Hankerson, is a very good player. Look, and I'm reading people on Twitter talking about, well, yeah, this new Pac-12 is going to be better than the Big 12. No, it's not. Not for a while. It might be someday, but it's not going to be there for a while because these teams coming up, there's just no way. I'm not seeing it. I just don't think there's as much talent there. And I expected a little more out of Oregon State than I saw. I do think they're doing as well as they could do. I think Trent Bray's doing a great coaching job with that team this year, but they're under-talented. And people need to understand that, they got some tough games. They got to play Boise State, UNLV. They got some tough games coming up.
Yeah, and Boise State, Genty might be the best running back in the country. I don't even think
ranked,
that's really.
What are they ranked now? Like 17th, I think. Boise State.
Yeah, they just popped in on the latest AP poll. They're coming in at 17, sandwiched between Utah and Indiana.
Yeah.
So they're right there, which is interesting because I brought that up with you pre-show, man. Because you look at the games that happened this week, right? The Tennessee upset, then you got Alabama, right? That loss, and you're like, oh, all these teams, blah blah, and everyone got all up in arms when Oregon struggled against Boise. Oh, they struggled against Boise State. They should have boat raced them. Blah. Boise State's good, like they're good.
Yeah,
they're number 17, and they are a legit playoff sleeper, a team that can get in there, turn some heads, and behind a guy who through 5 games has over 1,000 yards rushing. Yeah, they're a good football team.
Well, he's a great running back. There's no question about that. I mean, goodness sakes, he should be in the Heisman finals. He should be going to New York.
Yeah, if he continues this, might just hand it to him. I saw a tweet earlier that was comparing his numbers to the last running backs to win it, and you look through the same amount of games and his numbers. I mean, he's got better numbers than Reggie Bush at this point. He's got better numbers than Derrick Henry. Like it's incredible. I also want to get your thought here, Dwight. Some people might think you're crazy. Some people might say
a lot of people think I'm crazy.
You're spot on.
Ahead.
Yeah, I know that. But I was trying to let you down softly. Okay.
Appreciate it.
But you look at the overtime situation. Most people, unless you're Deion Sanders, right, want to go on defense first, right?
Yeah.
And and the way overtime works, it's really interesting because if I'm on defense, the other team scores a touchdown, they kick a field goal. I know exactly what I need to do. A field goal doesn't do it anymore. I got to score. But if I score, why automatically just play for a tie to go to the next overtime where now you start on offense, which puts you at the disadvantage, right? Why not just go for 2 when you have those plays in your back pocket now and just go for the win? That's
what I think, Chris. I've been pounding that drum for a while now, and I get a lot of people disagreeing with me. But I think if you're at home, if you've won the toss in the first overtime where you're going second on offense, and you know that in the second overtime you must go for 2. That's the new rule this year, or last year it was. You got to go for 2 on every touchdown. So you've scored a touchdown, so has your opponent. Okay, they went for 1. So here you are at the end of the first overtime. If you go for 2, you win the game, walk off the field, you're done. Now, I know you have a good 2-point play in your back pocket because you know in the next overtime, you have to go for 2. Mm-hmm. So I would think all these teams have a pretty dependable, reliable play that they trust to get them 2 points. And so what I'm saying is go for 2 in the first overtime because in the second overtime, you have to play first. You have to go on offense first. So that other team has basically the home field advantage by knowing how many points you scored. So why not just get it over with and go for it where if you make the 2, you win the game. Otherwise, you might get into a multi-overtime thing where both teams are just making 2-point conversions all the way through. This time, they've only made 1. You've got them where you want them. All you have to do is pick up a couple yards. You win the game. I say, show some guts. Go for 2 and end that thing. Especially if you're playing at home, the crowd's in your favor. You've got to play. I know you do. Everybody seems to have that play in their back pocket for at least one good 2-point conversion, right? Doesn't that make sense?
It makes sense to me. And how many times, too, do you see, Dwight, where in basketball, I mean, if it's a 2-point game with 10 seconds left, do teams draw up a play to go for 2 and tie it and go to overtime, or do they try to jack up that 3 to win it? It's quite often the 3 to win it is the first look.
Yeah.
And then when the other look's not there, then maybe they go for the win. I am team go for the win.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Well, in this case, it's such a special case, too, where once they changed the rules that after the first overtime, you got to go for 2. Well, you're almost there to the second overtime, so you might as well go for 2 that time.
Yeah.
At least you know you're going to win. You have a certainty. And in most of the times, like in the next overtime, you have no certainty. You're going first. So you end up with 4th and 15 in the first overtime. You're going to kick the field goal. You're going to go for the touchdown. That's a tough spot. You're probably going for the field goal. Well, then the other team knows all they have to do is kick a field goal to tie you, but they're going to try and get the touchdown.
Yeah. And nothing's guaranteed, too, like you're just saying. And so if I go and score the touchdown, now I kick the field goal, I get the ball back. What if the very first play they blow me up? Yeah. I lose 7 yards, and now everything just got shot to heck.
Or you get a holding penalty and have to move back 10 yards.
Yeah, you have to move back 10, and now you, like you just said, now you're just stuck in. You got to kick a field goal because you got to get points, and now the other team's like, sweet, yeah. I get a touchdown, I win this. You hand it to them a little bit.
Yeah, and here what the other thing I would say too, Chris, is okay. You decide to go for 2 at the end of the first overtime, and you don't get it. You lose the football game. All right? You'd have probably lost it in the second overtime because you had to go for 2 there, and you couldn't. If you didn't get it the first time, you're not going to get it the second time. So, what's the point?
Yeah, I get it. It's interesting. I never understood that. Sometimes the conservativeness. What did we miss? We missed a home run, it looks like, huh?
Yeah, it's 3-0 Detroit.
Uh-oh.
A home run in the top of the 9th.
Oof.
If he hit that off Class A, I think he did. Best reliever in baseball.
I don't care what anyone says. I know they say there's attendance problems in the regular season. There's not. There's just so many games. But gosh, playoff baseball's awesome. It's going to look pretty cool in about 10 years when there's playoff baseball down on the South Waterfront overlooking the Tillicum Bridge or whatever it's called.
Tillicum Crossing.
There you go. It's going to be fun.
I'm with you on that.
All right. When we come back, we're going to keep talking football. I haven't even got Dwight's thoughts on the Duck game and some Oregon high school football news that you don't want to miss. Chris Burkhardt here with the Godfather, Dwight Jaynes on Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into the Rib City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here with the Godfather, Dwight Jaynes. And Dwight, I didn't even get to talk to you yet. You got to get out of here. You got super secret stuff to do. But before we go, I got to get your thoughts on the Duck game on Friday, man. I thought that was a impressive performance, all things considered, even though Dillon Gabriel had two inexcusable interceptions on the goal line. But the Ducks really dominated that game.
Yeah, they did. I still don't know what to think about them, Chris. I'm totally not sold on them yet. I think they have really, really good players. So far, they're kind of making too many mistakes. And I don't know if you can make that many mistakes against Ohio State and get away with it. And it's going to be a heck of a game in that we don't know enough about either team. Yep. I mean, Ohio State basically hasn't played anybody. Oregon, they played Boise State, who's okay, but not a Big Ten team. So it's going to be, I think, a revelation either way on what happens. It's like we're going to finally find out who's good and who is not so good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at Ohio State's schedule. They beat up on Akron. They beat up on Western Michigan. They beat up on Marshall. They beat up on Michigan State 38-7. So you're looking at, basically the same game that Oregon had. It was a 31-10 game for Oregon, but they took care of that. And then they have this Duck game. They had Iowa too that they took care of. We know Iowa, no matter who they put at quarterback, they can't move the ball. They never have been able to, right? So you're right. Been a pretty easy schedule, and Oregon has had one too. I mean, Idaho's good, but not great. Should win that game. Same Boise State. I think they're really good, but they got the win like they should have. Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan State. They're taking because you're right. It's a big test for both teams, and I think this is going to be the biggest test to see where the Ducks can go from here for Dillon Gabriel, because he was supposed to be the star quarterback, and I do think he's really, really good, but he's not playing with like that same efficiency that Bo Nix played with last year. Yeah. He is making some mistakes where he's trying to just kind of force the ball in. Neither one of those passes should have been made that both turned into interceptions. The first one, if he passed the ball a half second sooner, maybe it's a touchdown, but he waited too long. The second one, the quarterback had the beat on that the entire time. You knew that as soon as he released that ball, he's going to make that cut. He did. Boom. He picks it. So you got to be careful. You can't make those mistakes against the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and I just, in this season of amazing upsets in college football, like I say, I wouldn't bet on it if I had inside information, which I don't have. But I couldn't pick Oregon to win that game. I just don't think they're going to win that game. Have you seen a point spread on it yet?
Let's see where we're at. I don't know the answer to that, Dwight. That's a good question. We can try to find it here as we talk through this one, but it's going to be a good game. I don't know where I'm going personally. I think Ohio State is probably the better team, probably wins this. Doesn't mean Oregon's out of the run for a playoff berth or even a national championship. It is still, air quotes, early in the season. Yeah. But looking at ESPN right now, Ohio State opening up right now, 3.5-point favorites.
Yeah, that probably makes some sense. They're on the road and they're still favored in the game. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that I would want to go against that. I know Duck fans are probably agitated to hear me say that, but I think Oregon has a chance to be a much better team later in the season. They have so many new players trying to gel together as a team, very talented players, but it might take them a while. And so we might see one of these situations where Oregon loses to them in the first game and then plays them later in a conference championship and beats them. Might be one of those situations.
Yeah, very well could be. I mean, you look at the schedule after this, Purdue, Illinois, Michigan, who has some holes in their armor too, Maryland, Wisconsin, and then the final game of the year against Washington. This is marquee, though. Autzen has never seen anything like this before. The closest to it was, 2007, I think it was. It was number 4 Arizona State, number 5 Oregon. First time 2 top 3 teams have been to Autzen together. There's been big matchups, but this one is special. Speaking of special, Dwight, There's some good high school sports news I want to get your thoughts on.
Yeah, I heard your update. You were talking about flag football,
That
right?
is right. Today at the big delegate assembly, it was voted upon, and girls flag football has been approved as a emerging sport.
Now, explain to me, what's an emerging sport? Does that mean it's sort of on a trial period, or what's
Basically, what this means in a nutshell is now this means that the school can start to devote their time and effort into growing that sport.
Mhm.
And if you see that growth and you see that interest, and because now you could, as an emerging sport, you can help your coaches. You do all these stuff because you're part of the school, right?
Yeah.
Now, if it emerges, then it becomes a fully sanctioned sport.
see.
And once it becomes sanctioned, that means the school supports it financially. The OSAA puts on state flag football championships.
Okay, so-
all this stuff.
in the beginning that there won't be state playoffs?
No, so like right now, the flag football has been independent, and they do have some championships, but it's all independently run,
Like
through
club
the
sports, kind of.
exactly similar
Yeah.
to what you would see with like a club water polo or lacrosse.
Well, that's the
which is
way girls
popular.
basketball started.
Yep, and
Yeah.
but and so if they go through the sanctioning period, I believe it would be 2026. It could be a
Okay.
fully sanctioned sport, and this is big because we're growing. Because it was at the delegate assembly last year that men's volleyball was approved,
Right.
and that one is going through the emerging process. Might be sanctioned now within the next year too. So there's push for lacrosse, esports.
Yeah.
Oregon is a growing high school sports bed, which is pretty cool. But music means it's time for you to go.
Yeah, I guess it is.
And I got to do some stretches because I got 2 hours by myself.
You'll be okay.
Don't go anywhere. Plenty more sports talk coming up on the Rip City Drive. Well, hello there, Rip City. It is 4 o'clock in the afternoon on this beautiful Sunday day. We have plenty of sports action to get you caught up on. First off, in the weekend that was in college football, the Ducks took care of the Michigan State Spartans, hand in former Beaver coach Jonathan Smith. Another loss in Eugene, 31-10. And now the Ducks turn their sights to number 2 Ohio State, who will travel to Eugene on Saturday. College game day will be there. The atmosphere is going to be amazing as the Ducks look to stay undefeated. As for Oregon State, they had to go to 2 overtimes, but they walked away victorious as well to improve to 4-1 with a 39-31 victory over Colorado State. In Oregon high school sports today, girls flag football was approved as an emerging sport by the OSAA. More on that coming up here on the Rip City Drive. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhart here filling in for Chad Doing. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, or X. I still can't call it X. I struggle with that, but that is what its real name is. You can follow me there at Chris J. Burkhart. Send me any comments, concerns, questions, topics you want me to talk about. You can also join the chat over on YouTube. Just type in Rip City Radio. It'll pop up, and you can join the chat there, or you can pick up your phone. 503-248-0620 is that telephone number if you want to chat with me as well. And we got plenty to talk about because I didn't even get to a lot of NFL talk with Dwight, didn't get to a lot of college talk with Dwight. And boy, howdy, was it a weekend for you football fans. It was a wild weekend, especially in college football. We'll get to it here in just a second. And of course, at 5:20, as long as he's still down, got to verify, but it does look like Travis Demers, your voice of the Portland Trailblazers, will be joining us to talk about the Blazers because, heck, man, it's sneaking up on you. But preseason basketball on Friday, Blazers heading up to Seattle to take on the Clippers. That's a big deal. Season's almost here. Get a couple preseason games out of the way, and then it's 82 maybe more, depending on if you get into that in-season tournament championship game or what have you. The 82 games to glory. Maybe playing capture the flag, because as you know, Cooper Flag is in the mix for the Blazers. Mod people consensus number 1 overall pick. Big difference maker. Is he the one that the Blazers are eyeing if they end up with the number 1 overall pick? But that is neither here nor there. We'll ask Travis about it when he joins the show. But, man, we got to talk football because, again, it was a wild weekend, not only in college football but in the NFL. You got the game last night between Dallas and the Steelers that was delayed by, an hour and a half while the weather went through and there was a lightning delay. And, boom, it took a minute, and they finally got going, and it went into, almost 1 o'clock in the morning, Pittsburgh time, before Dallas was able to sneak out with a victory. And so there's that. And then you had my 49ers, who apparently aren't very good right now as they're still dealing with injuries and trying to figure out what to do. But the defense can't stop a nosebleed all of a sudden. So I don't know what's going on there. It's just wild. You had the Bills and the Texans. Josh Allen was struggling. I mean, what is football anyway? Nobody even knows. It's just wild. Like Dwight was saying, talking about, I wouldn't put my money on that. Wouldn't put my money on the Ducks or Ohio State. The NFL is crazy too. You had the Falcons. They take down the Bucks to improve to 3-2. The Bucks, who have looked pretty good all year long with the resurgent Baker Mayfield. I think one of the biggest surprises, though, for me, and I don't know about you, can chime off in the chat on YouTube, on X, or on the telephone line, 503-248-0620. But, boy, the Minnesota Vikings, who saw this coming? Behind a cast-off of my San Francisco 49ers. Heck, in fact, 2 of them, because his backup is also a former 49er. Sam Darnold and Nick Mullins, who I'm talking about. The Minnesota Vikings take down the Jets and improve to an incredible 5-0 on the season. Sam Darnold was just 14 of 31 for 179 yards, did have an interception, but you know what? At the end of the day, the team did what they needed to do, and they got a win. Incredible. Did anybody not wearing purple and yellow predict Minnesota to be 5-0? 5-0 with Sam Darnold, and kudos to Sam Darnold. You got to love that. A guy goes, he's in New Jersey. He's in New York with the Jets. He's with the Panthers. He goes to San Francisco where he's the backup to Brock Purdy. And now he's in Minnesota and he's playing well. Might be the best stretch of his career. And quite frankly, watching him in San Francisco as well, like you saw, you're like, this guy still has it. I don't know if he was a starter, but he still has it. You could tell he's a good quarterback. When you see a guy who struggled and sometimes the stops along the way weren't the best, and now he's in a spot that works for him and things are starting to click, you like it. And you also remember that he's still young by NFL standards. He's young by any standards. What's his stat? He's younger than Josh Allen. He's younger than Trevor Lawrence. Some nonsense like that. Like the guy's young. He's 27. Okay, 27. Feels like he should be older because it feels like he's been in the league like forever. But he's only 27. That makes him 2 years older than Trevor Lawrence, who Trevor Lawrence feels like a baby, right? Sam Darnold feels like the old guy. Yeah, he's only 2 years older than the baby. Maybe Sam Darnold's still a baby. Like, he's not even over 30 yet. He's not even over the NFL hill. But here he is leading the 5-0 Vikings. So kudos to him because that's impressive. Again, you have your off days, you have your good days, you have your bad days. He had one on that night, a bad one, but they still got the win, and that's what matters, right? Also in the win column, the suddenly, maybe competent Chicago Bears, they improved to 3-2 on the season. Caleb Williams, 20 of 29, 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he is another one who early in the year, there was definitely a little bit of struggle. And now we starting to kind of find that groove of his and get a little bit more comfortable with the game. Still making a few mistakes here and there, but I think the biggest thing for him, and you saw it early on, was just the speed of the NFL game. Like, everybody on defense is fast. You got defensive linemen who are as fast as college corners, man. It's insane, especially if you've ever been fortunate enough to see both of those games live and see the speed difference. It's unreal how quick the NFL game is. And you saw early on for Caleb Williams, you throwing into triple coverage into a situation where at USC, Oklahoma, he could make that pass, right? Defense wasn't going to adjust to it. Maybe they didn't have the speed. They didn't have their head turned. The ball was going to get through the defense. Not in the NFL level. Not at the NFL level. And now you're making the adjustments, and he's being wise with his throws. 20 of 29. That's a good day at the park. 300 yards passing, couple touchdowns. Bears get the win over just the hapless Carolina Panthers, who did go with Andy Dalton, but then got Bryce Young back in there for a little bit. They have no idea where they're going. They're beat up and just, they're a bad football team right now. But if you're the Bears, you want to take advantage of that and win those games. Also, big game that happened in Cincinnati. This one went to overtime. This is, of course, I'm talking about the Ravens and the Bengals, in the division matchup. What can they do? Can the Bengals right this ship? Because the Bengals have, oh my goodness, they have struggled this year. Struggled. Losses to the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Commanders. They got the win against the just terrible Carolina Panthers, and then they had to face off against the Ravens. This is the same Ravens team, right? They started out the gate 0-2. And we had the conversations on the Riv City Drive, like who is the most, the pretenders and who's has the most to fear starting 0-2. Who's going to bounce back? Now, we looked at the Bengals starting 0-2, and we're like, I don't know. Maybe they'll get through it. The Steelers were undefeated, but maybe they'll get through this. Division's tough, yada, yada. They haven't figured it out. Baltimore was one that everyone's like, I think they're going to be okay. They're too good to just be bad, right? And it took them, I think, realizing that Derrick Henry is probably their best player. Like, yes, I know Lamar Jackson and all, but Derrick Henry is an MVP candidate. He's unreal right now. But they start 0-2, then they get the good win against the Cowboys, they get the good win against the Bills, and then boom, they knock off the Bengals. here they are 3-2, kind of righted that ship. Things, they got the Commanders, who are playing pretty well right now. The Buccaneers took the L, but they're a good team. So they still got good teams, and then maybe they'll take a couple more L's, but they righted the ship, right? You look at this, Lamar Jackson, 348 yards passing, 4 total touchdowns. Derrick Henry, 92 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Not a bad day for the Baltimore Ravens, who bounced back. I like that. Start 0-2. Here you are, 3-2. Things are starting to look up. Of course, the Dolphins, they got past the Patriots with Tyler Huntley at quarterback, 18-31, 194 yards. The Commanders, though, in their game against the Browns are they're, I don't even have the word for it. Deshaun Watson, he ain't it. I mean, that guy got paid and then kind of fell off the face of the planet. He 15-28, 125 yards and a touchdown, not playing very well. And this was a team that everyone was like, if the offense clicks, they're going to do something because that defense is a Super Bowl defense. That's what they told us, right? But that defense couldn't stop the Commanders. And Jaden Daniels, who has another 200-yard game, throws in a touchdown in there. He's also a threat on the ground, led the team in rushing with 82 yards. He is right now the front runner. He's the best rookie in the game right now. He's unreal. And you look at Caleb Williams, took a minute to get going. You look at Bo Nix, who took a minute to get going and is now starting to pile up wins. Play better. He's still taking his lumps, though. There was no warming up for Jaden. He got right into this and just started slinging it. And now the team's sitting there at 4-1. That's very similar to the Minnesota Vikings. Like, who would have predicted this? Who would have predicted they would have been in this position? And here they are, like this team a playoff team? I mean, we'll see when the dust settles at the end of the year. We're only 5 games in, but kudos to Jaden Daniels for getting the thing done and playing like just a stud quarterback, man. Gotta love it. Got to love it. And then you had the game with the Bills and the Texans that came down to the wire. Bills couldn't get it done. Texans get the big field goal as time expired, which had some English on it. I thought it was going wide left, and even though they're playing indoors, the wind blew in or something because whoop, it went left to right, got right back in through the uprights. They get the 23-20 win. Then C.J. Stroud is an interesting case here. Now I want him to play better because he's my fantasy football starting quarterback, okay? But, I'm not the guy who gets mad at a guy if he has bad games and starts sending him messages, DMs on Instagram like I think he's really going to read them. Oh, my gosh, you ruined my fantasy football team, and oh, you didn't cover my parlay. But no, that's nonsense. But needs to be a little bit better with the ball. He did have 331 yards passing and a touchdown, but he had an interception late in that game. That was a pass that probably shouldn't have been thrown. It felt like it went right to the Bills defenders. And then after the interception, too, he had the fumble where it was just loose ball handling, right? He's just kind of holding the ball in his hand because he's hoping to come out for a pass as he's getting out of the pocket. I get it. But that ball is down low, no security on it, hits the hip of the defender, pops out. There's a fumble. Gave the Bills chances that they probably shouldn't have had, right? But they come out at the end of it. Another story in this one, though, is just the absolute struggles of Josh Allen. I mean, 9 of 30, 131 yards. That is not a stat line from him that you see very often. I mean, the Houston defense. So, I mean, it's a good defense. Team's playing well. So that leads to it, too. But when you got Josh Allen, who talent-wise, by most accounts, is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, not named Patrick Mahomes, you would expect better games and to show up in big ones like that, right? You want to get those wins against the Texans. You're still 3-2. Things are going to be fine, but you need big games from Josh Allen. The Broncos improved to 3-2 with a win over the Raiders. Bo Nix had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, even though he had a spat with Sean Payton. If Chad were here, he'd probably agree with me. Get rid of the new age blue and orange and just wear those throwbacks all the time. Those things are beautiful. Don't ruin it. Let's just keep that going. Maybe you'll win more ball games. Not much else to speak of because my Niners lost. I don't want to get into that. Brock Purdy, 19-35, 244 yards. Again, it's not a terrible game, but you need to play better. Ayuk finally got going. You don't have Christian McCaffrey, but you have weapons. Take advantage of it. And the defense figures something out. You can't go if you're the Niners scoreless in the second half while your defense allows 14 points. That's not championship football. Fix that one. The biggest one for me, though, the biggest surprise before we wrap up our NFL talk, what happened in Seattle? And I got to ask Travis about this one when he gets on because he's a Giant fan. But has there ever been a game that you recall watching, what, 103-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown to start the scoring, and then the game ends by sealing it with a blocked field goal return for a touchdown? Like, this game had it all. They had it all, and the Giants walked away with a 29-20 victory over there in Seattle. Didn't expect that one because the Giants aren't a very good team, and Seattle's looked pretty good early on. But boy, there was something in the air in the football world, because that was the NFL craziness. And the Giant, that one was a little more reminiscent of what happened in college football on Saturday, because from coast to coast, north, south, east, west, didn't matter. It was nothing but craziness in the college football world. Bama goes down, Tennessee goes down, Michigan goes down, and we're all going to talk about it here coming up on the Rip City Drive, because let me tell you what, college football, you lived up to the hype. It was all hype, nonstop, all the time. I didn't know what was going on. I was so hyped. I said, I'm going to go start a conference on college football 25 with Vanderbilt. I'm a Vanderbilt fan now after watching them take down Bama. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a Husky fan after watching them take down Michigan. Can't do that. My Duck friends will disown me. But, man, what a weekend in college football. And we'll talk about it next on the Rip City Drive. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here filling in for Chad Doing today. You can follow me on X at Chris J. Burkhardt. You can join the conversation with me as well. Just head to youtube.com, type in Rip City Radio. Our page will pop up. Like, share, subscribe. Join the chat. Or you can phone in 503-248-0620, and the wonderful Mike Oakes will take your call and put you on hold, and then I'll talk to you, and we can have fun. All right? But I teased last segment about college football. All right? College football this weekend was amazing. Amazing. Everywhere you looked, there was upsets. There was great football. There was crazy games. I mean, if you're a Duck fan, you loved what happened in Autzen on Saturday, 31-10 over Michigan State, right? In a game that you pretty much dominated, start to finish, front to back, right? Dylan Gabriel, 20 of 32, 257 yards, had 2 picks, inexcusable picks that he's going to go watch on tape and hopefully fix for Saturday's game against Ohio State. But other than that, still had a pretty solid game. Jordan James, 24 carries, 166 yards, and a touchdown. And Jordan James is an interesting one too, right? Because I think Oregon fans, right, have been just pampered for so long. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm an Oregon fan. I'm an Oregon alum. I get it. We were pampered. Jonathan Stewart, Michael James, Ontario Smith and Maurice Morris, Jeremiah Johnson, Kenyon Barner, right? LeGarrette Blunt. Obviously, Royce Freeman, who put it together. Bucky Irving, who was great. For the first time in a long time, you don't have a back that feels like that big play, big threat back, right? Like Bucky, you felt could bust off a 50-yarder at any moment. LaMichael James, oh my gosh, just him being in the backfield, you're like, okay, first and 10 from the 20-yard line. We still got 80 yards to go. LaMike could do this in one play. Right? Jordan James doesn't give me that vibe, but he's putting together very, very solid games, just running it in a different type of manner, right? It's give him the carries, watch him go. He's going to get, his handful of yards per carry. He might bust one for 16 yards here and there, but nothing too crazy, but reliable because you can hand the ball, get a few yards. I mean, right now he's at 552 yards, averaging 6.3 yards per carry, a long of 41. Not a super long one, right? But he just goes in, hammers away, just chisel, and is eventually going to break through the defense, get some yards again. The long of 41 was in that game against Michigan State, and he has 24 carries, 166 yards. You look at the game against UCLA, 20 carries, 103 yards. He averaged 5.2. with only a long of 16, which means he didn't have a long run to really buoy his average. Like that, basically 5 yards per carry was almost a guarantee. So it's a different style of back. It's not a bad back. It's just a different style of back. Pounds you. Hopefully opens up the pass game in the long run. That's where Dylan Gabriel can shine. I mean, you look at what the Ducks did against Michigan State. You take away those 2 interceptions, and granted, I get that's if this would have happened type thing, but those were both on goal-to-go situations. And the Ducks could have walked away with an extra 14 points, ended up walking away with 0, right? That's big time. That's the difference between a 31-10 game and a 45-10 game. And that matters, right? So the Ducks moved the ball. They did what they wanted to do. Ohio State's going to be a test with a capital T. It's going to be rough. I'm excited for it. I know Autzen is going to be bumping. College game day is going to be there, so that's going to be huge. I didn't even get to ask Dwight about that. It was a topic we talked about pre-show. It was like, who would you pick to be the guest picker? You've already gone down the Sabrina route. I believe Phil Knight's been there before. Ty Burrell, right? Where do you go? I think he was in favor of Caitlin Olsen. Ties to the university. Made sense. For me, on the back of having Marshawn Lynch at Cal, I think you got to go with one of the greatest running backs of all time. You got to get LaMichael James in there as your guest picker. Get LaMike. I think go with a football player on this one, especially one with good ties to university. This would be a great chance to get LaMichael James, Jonathan Stewart, maybe Joey Harrington on there as a guest picker. That'd be pretty cool. What's Haloti Ngata doing nowadays? He was a beast when he was there at Oregon. I take that. Not a lot of, I don't know where all of our Oregon Duck celebrity connections are. Got to look into that one. So give me one of the football players. That'd be pretty fun. Basketball season's about here. What's Dylan Brooks up to? Does he have a break in his preseason schedule? Get him out here. Either way, college game day, Ohio State, first time a top 3 matchup in Autzen Stadium. I mean, boy, unreal. This game, all eyes in the college football world are going to be on it. Ducks are going to have to be at their best. Their defensive front is good enough to hang with Ohio State. I'll tell you that much. At least I think they are. I mean, from what I've watched, the only thing they can't stop is Ashton Jeanty, but nobody can stop Ashton Jeanty for the number 17 Boise State Broncos. Here's a stat for you. Through 5 games, Derrick Henry, when he won the Heisman in 2015, through 5 games, 570 yards, 9 touchdowns on 97 carries. In 2009, when Mark Ingram won the Heisman, through 5 games, 487 yards, 6 touchdowns on 83 carries. When Reggie Bush, perhaps the most electrifying running back we've ever seen, won the Heisman in 2005, through 5 games, 601 yards, 6 touchdowns on 71 carries. Ashton Jeanty, through 5 games, 1,031 yards, 16 touchdowns on 94 carries. That's 2 more carries than Derrick Henry, but 7 more touchdowns and almost 500 more yards. That's over 500 yards more and 10 touchdowns more than Mark Ingram. And it's 400 yards and 10 touchdowns more than Reggie Bush. Needless to say, Ashton Jeanty is putting up numbers, guys. So when you look back at the Duck game and say, oh, man, they struggled with Boise State. Yeah, well, nobody can stop Ashton Jeanty right now. He is on some otherworld stuff. Kudos to him. Boise State's looking good. They're a college football playoff Cinderella. They got a very, very good chance of getting in and winning a game. Like, it's watch out. As long as Jeanty's healthy, that team's tough. He is a dang good football player. Kudos to him. Now, other things that happened in college football this weekend. Like I told you guys, it was crazy. I hope you watched. I hope you witnessed it all, right? Because number 11, USC, upset by unranked Minnesota. Number 10, Michigan, upset by unranked Washington. Number 8, Miami, should have been upset by unranked Cal. Number 4, Tennessee, upset by unranked Arkansas. And of course, number 1, Alabama, upset by unranked Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's very first win over a number 1 team. And yes, Vanderbilt did the Tennessee thing. They tore down the goalpost. They marched it through Nashville. They threw it in the river. They have a $100,000 fine coming their way. Arkansas did the same thing. I think theirs was a $250,000 fine because they're a repeat offender for rushing the field. But you know what? That's college football, baby. Tennessee 14, Arkansas 19. Razorbacks took care of business. The Vanderbilt-Alabama game was an interesting one. Jalen Milroe, 18 for 24, 310 yards and a touchdown. Offensively, I felt like they kind of did their thing. They could they put up more? You would suspect it, right? But Vanderbilt was just on one. They were rolling. But Diego Pavia, 16 to 20, 252 yards, 2 touchdowns. The defense was pretty solid, honestly. They made great plays. I mean, this was a team that sometimes it's just a team of destiny, right? Well, at that time, in that moment, they weren't going to lose that game. Bama had chances. They played it smartly down at the end, right? You get the score. I mean, I was watching with some people who aren't college football fans. I'll tell you that much. Because when Vandy goes up by 2 scores with 6 minutes left, we're like, oh, that's going to do it. No, it's not. This is college football, man. 6 minutes and 2 scores to make up. You got a lot of time. And Alabama had their chance, but Vandy made the right plays. They made the absolute right plays. They didn't melt under the pressure, and they handed it to them, which is interesting because that stadium it's undergoing renovations on chunks of it, but the entire side opposite of the television camera, it was all crimson. I mean, that was an Alabama home crowd. So Vanderbilt took care of it. They took care of it. Alabama took care of it. Or Vandy took care of it, excuse me. Great win. Great win for Vandy. Down goes Bama. After upsetting Georgia, down goes Bama. Kalen DeBoer, who never loses. He never loses games. Oh, he just lost one. And now he's got some interesting things to do. I mean, you saw what was going on with old number 13. I'm sorry, his name escapes me. But throwing mouth guards, kicking the ball at the end, just throwing a mega fit. I don't know if old Nick Saban would allow that to happen. We'll see what Kalen DeBoer does. But Kalen DeBoer, he's a dang good coach. Dang good coach. When it comes to doing the X's and O's between the white lines, he knows what he's doing. Takes that loss against Vanderbilt to fall to 108-13 all time as a head coach. Unreal. That is unreal. You look at his first year at Washington, he only lost 2 games. It's halfway there. Pretty sure Bama will find a way to right that ship, though. Way too much talent. And a coach who, despite the loss, is still one of the best in the game. You saw what he did with Washington, man. You saw what he did with Fresno State. If you paid attention, you saw what he did at Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls. Some people have words they can't say. There's one for me. He was 67-3 with the Cougars, 12-6 with the Bulldogs. Keep in mind that first year was the COVID year, so he only played 6 games. 25-3 at Washington, and here he is 4-1 at Bama. But they went down to Vanderbilt in one of the biggest upsets in college football. Not only the year, it's up there. It's up there with the App States over Michigan type games, right? Nobody picked Vandy to win that game. Nobody. Which is why the closer it got to the upset, more people started tuning in. Yes, they did. Incredible, incredible stuff from Vanderbilt. Over in Tennessee, they were in Arkansas. They were favored to win that game. That didn't happen. They dropped an egg. 14-19 to the Razorbacks. And this is interesting to me. Let's talk about this for a second. So Tennessee's number 4, right? Tennessee is number 4. They lose to unranked Arkansas, and they fall to number 8. 4-8, losing to unranked Arkansas. Alabama loses to unranked Vandy, falls from 1-7. Oregon starts the year at 3, beats Idaho, beats Boise State. Doesn't look great doing it, but they were wins, and they fell from number 3 to number 9 in 2 weeks. They fell from number 3 to number 7 after that first game against Idaho. So you win 2 games, you fall from 3 to 9. You play in the SEC, and you lose to an unranked team, especially one you had no business losing to in Vandy. You only fall 6 spots. You're still top 10. Everything's looking up. Not into conspiracy theories here, but smells fishy to me. I'm not a fan of that. Tennessee's still really good, though. That's probably, why they didn't fall too much, because football's crazy. And the interesting part is with the way college football has now realigned itself with the 12-team playoff, less emphasis is put on these games. So you can afford, if you're Bama or Tennessee, to lose these games and still get through the conference, have one loss and still get in as one of those 12 teams. It's not all lost anymore. It's not the BCS era, right? Where you lose a game in November, you lose a game in October, and you're like, oh, there it is. Season's over. What are we going to do now? Nah, everything's good. I think those teams will bounce back. It'll be interesting. Syracuse got the win over UNLV, UNILV, as some people call it, since they lost half their team because, they didn't pay up as the UNLV said they would, or the NIL said they would. Things are crazy. Number 9, Missouri as well. They lost. I mean, there's another top 10 team that went down. Gosh, crazy how many top 10 teams went down or almost went down. This one, though, in my pick'em, I picked Missouri. Like Texas A&M, I just didn't think they were going to wallop the Tigers, but they did, 41-10. Like I picked Missouri. I was like, okay, they come in, they're undefeated. I like what they're throwing down. Texas A&M is good, but Texas A&M is kind of like Notre Dame to me, where they always have those games where they just are like, meh, right? I felt like this might have been that game. Nope. They left, no doubt. They were up 24-0 at halftime. And then at that point, it's pretty much all over but the crying, right? Washington takes on Michigan at home. That's at Husky Stadium, right? Took care of business, mainly due to the 13-0 outscoring of the Wolverines in the fourth quarter. Big upset. Will Rogers, 21-31, 271 and 2 touchdowns. And this is a game a lot of people were pointing out that, like, we're picking this upset because they felt that Washington has looked good despite their 2 losses. They've just had a lot of self-inflicted wounds, right? Not so much in this one. Took care of business. You like to see that if you're a Husky fan. And then USC loses to Minnesota, and Minnesota hasn't looked good all year long. They've been up and down, but they haven't looked great. And even when they looked up, they haven't looked great. But they took care of USC. And then after the game, a reporter asked the players about the last play. That was the game winner, and Lincoln Riley chimes in with, "Don't ask him that. Be more professional," which is just absolute nonsense. It's not professional to ask a player about a play that literally happened in the game. Like, who has a better perspective on any play that happened in the game than the players, right? Now, there's different things, different ways to ask it. I mean, I remember asking DeMarcus Cousins one time, "Hey, what happened there in the fourth quarter?" That was rookie Chris asking a proper question, but asking it in a very dumb way. What happened in the fourth quarter? You know what he hit me with? You watched the game. You watched the game, right? Then you know what happened. Like, they fell apart. They lost the game to the Blazers. That's what happened. Now, if I would have been like, "Hey, DeMarcus, wheels started to fall off there in the fourth quarter. From your perspective, what was the reasoning? Like, was it the defense looked good, blah, 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 but what was the reason things just weren't gelling?" It's a better way of asking a question. Not perfect, but it's a better way of asking a question. And maybe the reporter could have asked the question a little bit better in that situation at USC, but the question itself is perfectly fair. Hey, you who played in the game, you who was on the field when that play happened, what did you see? What were you thinking? What was going through your mind? So for Lincoln Riley to say, "Oh, that's just a terribly unprofessional question." Come on, man. You have been anointed so often as just like this messiah of coaching. Guess what? USC didn't look great last year. Oh, it was the defense. It was this. It was that. USC hasn't looked great this year. Came in highly touted, highly ranked. Hasn't looked great. They've looked good, but they haven't looked great. For a coach who should be able to take these teams and make them look great. So you want to talk about professional? Do your job. I'm rooting for you. USC, that's good. Make SoCal good football. Things were bumping when the Trojans were good. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush. Oregon was on the come up. I want to go down to the Coliseum and 2 top 5 teams going at it. I don't like this saltiness in the postgame presser, though. Why? Be more professional? It's a perfectly fair question, man. You just don't like losing. I think there's a difference between being a mad loser and a poor loser. Mad because I lost. I don't like losing. I'm mad. Poor loser? Pouty? It's different. Lincoln, being a little pouty. You're too good to be pouty. That's my 2 cents. Listen to it. It's words of wisdom. I want you to be great. You take all that money you make. This way more than me, and show me how to coach football, though. All right, going to take a break here. Plenty more sports talk coming up on the Rip City Drive. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here, filling in for Chad Doing today. You can follow me on X at Chris J. Burkhardt. Send me all your comments and questions and concerns, what you thought about the weekend in college football, what you thought about the NFL, what you thought about MLB playoffs. Detroit wins it over Cleveland today, 3-0. Good on them. Right now, you got KC and New York in the bottom of the first. 0-0 ball game. Obviously, still plenty left. I made a joke with Dwight about how nice it'd be to see some playoff baseball there at the South Waterfront over the Tillicum Crossing. I really hope what the Portland Diamond Project has been laying down comes to fruition. I hope it happens. And I know there's haters out there. Oh, just the Portland Diamond Project filling you another, half-empty glass and lying to you and blah, blah, blah. Tell you what. It's easy to say that, but getting this expansion stuff going it's tough. It's tough. Look at the WNBA, right? WNBA, that one looked like it was going really well for Portland to get an expansion. And then it was all of a sudden, nope, it all fell through. Toronto and Golden State are getting the expansion. Everything was quiet after that. And that's where people knock the Diamond Project. Oh, it's too quiet. Nothing's happening. Well, everything was quiet on the WNBA front after it appeared to fall through, right? And then what happened? Oh, after a couple months of quiet, news broke that the WNBA is coming to Portland. So just because it's quiet on the outside doesn't mean there's not a lot going on the inside behind closed doors. The talks for the WNBA to Portland, they never ended. Hit a couple speed bumps, but never ended. And now they got an expansion team. And the Portland Diamond Project is doing what you need to do. If MLB does decide to expand, which they likely will, there's definitely some candidates to get in there. Obviously, Portland's one of them. Utah's trying to put together a package. I've heard murmurs of Montreal trying to get back into the baseball thing, which, I'd take that. Bring back the Expos. That'd be sweet. But if MLB decides to expand and then they come to Portland and Portland has no plans, right? And they're like, oh gosh, we don't know what to do. We didn't expect this. We don't have plans for a stadium. We don't have land. We don't have okay, well then we're moving on. We're going to go talk to Utah, who has land bought and they're ready to build, and let's go. And that's what will happen. So Portland Diamond Project's doing what they have to do. Owning land matters at this point. It's not like you're going to go build a stadium, right? You're not going to go build a 40,000 seater stadium that just sits there on the waterfront in the hopes that baseball comes calling. But if you buy the land and you're ready to start building when they do, it's a different story. And then you have expansion, so you have X amount of years to build the stadium. Maybe it's a 2-year window, yada, yada, yada. But Portland Diamond Project's doing what they need to do. And the baseball fan in me hopes it happens. I've grown up my entire life, like many of you, wanting baseball in Portland. I understood why you didn't have Major League Baseball at the time, but we had AAA, man. We had the Portland Beavers. That was great. I spent so many summers hopping on the Max train, getting down to a Beaver game, watching AAA ball. I tried to get down there when I knew there was players on rehab assignments. I know back when Ricky Weeks was having his run as a good top MLB player, came down on rehab, I was there. It's like, yeah, a chance to watch the big boys. Watch the guys go up. These guys are going to be pitching in Major League Baseball next year. These guys are going to be, it was so fun. Providence Park was a sweet spot to watch baseball too. I loved it in the summer. Then you lost that and you wanted you wanted Major League Baseball. You wanted it to come. You were hoping you get baseball back. Kudos to the Hillsboro Hops. They came out, put baseball in Hillsboro. It's not Portland. It's a suburb of Portland, but it's not Portland. And for, us East Siders, it's a trek. It is a trek to get out to Hillsboro. But it's worth it when you do, because the summer baseball is great. The vibes are awesome. The Hops is objectively awesome mascot for a Pacific Northwest team too. Let me tell you what. And when you go, yeah, it's just single A, but boy, it's baseball. And it scratches the itch if you're a fan. It does. It absolutely does. And KL Wambacher and co. put together a good program over there. They serve the fans well. They're going to get a new stadium, going to already enhance an already great experience to go watch baseball. But with all due respect, it's still not Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball would be a vibe in this city. And when you watch teams like New York and Kansas City and Cleveland and Detroit playing playoff baseball right now, then you can close your eyes and envision what that would look like on the waterfront, right? What it would look like on an October night, like right now, where it's 40 degrees, or 80 degrees, 40 degrees, 80 degrees and sunny. Walking over the Tillicum Crossing into the ballpark, smell of garlic fries and hot dogs permeating the air. You know that sounds great. Who cares if it's raining? They're going to be smart and put a dome on that thing, right? A little retractable roof, Safeco Field style. That'll matter. All I know is when I watch baseball, like I'm watching playoff baseball right now, I want Portland to have a team so bad. I really hope it happens. I really, really hope it happens. That's my baseball tangent. We're going to take a break, though. When we come back, plenty of more sports talk. And the voice of your Portland Trailblazers, Travis Demers, joins us at 5:20 to get us ready for the upcoming season. Chris Burkhardt here. One more hour left on the Rip City Drive. Hello, Rip City. It is 5 o'clock on this beautiful October afternoon, and there's plenty of sports action to get to. First off, in college football over the weekend, the Ducks took care of business, pretty much dominating Michigan State from start to finish, picking up the 31-10 victory over the Spartans and former Beaver coach Jonathan Smith. And now their attention turns to the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes, who will make their trip to Autzen on Saturday. College game day will be there. It's going to be a fun day down the I-5 corridor. Also in Corvallis, the Beavers outlasted Colorado State in a double overtime thriller, 39-31, to improve to 4-1. Good for them. The wins keep coming. Trent Bray taking care of business. And in Oregon high school news, the OSA approved girls flag football as an emerging sport today. Plenty of more sports talk coming up on the Rip City Drive. Welcome back into the Rip City Drive. Chris Burkhardt here, filling in for the boss man Chad Doing today. He'll be back tomorrow. He's just taking a little staycation day. My guess is he's out golfing, doing something. He's got to take advantage. He has lots of vacation days to burn, and basketball season is about to start. And once it does, you don't get a lot of days to burn vacation days. Let me tell you what, things get a little crazy, and you're up till 1 o'clock in the morning covering your Portland Trail Blazers, and they start their preseason action on Friday against the Clippers up in Seattle, taking on Climate Pledge Arena and bringing basketball back up there, and that'll be fun. Another good preseason game. They did this, was it last year or the year before up there with the Clippers as well, when you had that classic Steve Ballmer pregame rant, man, and it's always fun to see NBA action going on up in Seattle. So that'll be fun. You see what the WNBA has done. The Storm have a great following. They were great there with Stewie and Sue Bird, and it's fun. Basketball in Seattle is meant to be. So bring the NBA back already, right? We need the Supersonics back up in Seattle, and it may not be the Supersonics, but basketball fans up north will get a taste of NBA action coming up in just a few days. And then the gauntlet for the Trailblazers starts, right? You got to get through the preseason, and then you got the 82 game regular season. Still plenty of unanswered questions. And joining us in about 17, 20 minutes will be the voice of Trailblazers, Travis Demers. We'll talk to him about what he thinks is going on this season, what his expectations are, what goes into the season when you are the voice of the Trailblazers, right? And obviously the injuries, Robert Williams hurting his hammy during training. He had the shoulder injury to Shaden Sharp. And so there's a lot going on right now as the team prepares to take the next step. And some people think the Blazers are going to go and try to win games. Others think they're going to try to tank. Me, I just want good basketball, man. I don't want 60-point blowouts like we saw last year multiple times, right? Like, if the Blazers lose games, fine, but just give me entertaining basketball. That's key. That's how these young guys are going to develop. How's Scoot going to look? How's Shea going to look if he does get back on the court healthy? Has Tamani Kamara improved his offensive game? How does Jabari Walker look? Because he looked great last year, much improved. Can he improve again? How does Donovan Clingan look? Right? A lot of questions going in to the season. Friday is that first preseason game. Then Sunday at Golden One Center, they take on the Sacramento Kings. That's a 3 p.m. tip. And then Wednesday against, I'm so going to mess this up, Ratio Farm. I don't think that's how you say it. It's how it's spelled, though. And they're going to play that team to open up the preseason slate at Moda. And then they end the preseason slate at Moda against the Utah Jazz. And that's a game that I think Blazer fans should have circled, because that's the first game on Blazer Vision and the new partnering up with K2. So the other games, Clipper game on Friday, Rip City Radio. Kings game on Sunday, Rip City Radio. The home opener for the preseason, not the real home opener, but the preseason home opener on Wednesday, Rip City Radio. That Friday game, though, that's the first game on K2 and Blazer Vision, which is big news. Big news. Like when we had Dwayne Hankins on, he talked about how this new deal expands this reach that they had 4 times. 4 times the reach, 4 times the ability to get into households and get to the eyes of young Blazer fans. That's huge. That's huge. So I know Blazer fans are excited for that, because the season then starts on October 23rd at home against the Golden State Warriors. They start the season with a 3-game homestand. Warriors, and then 2 games against the Pelicans before their first road trip, which isn't really a roadie. 2-game roadies down to LA down to California don't really count. But it is funny. I always did the math about this, how they do a road trip to Sacramento, which is like 600 some odd miles from Portland, right? And that is the closest opponent. The closest opponent to the Portland Trailblazers is the Sacramento Kings. Now you look at teams like New York, their closest opponent is I think it's 5 miles between Madison Square Garden and Barclays Center, if that. You look at the Clippers and the Lakers. Yeah, well, they play in the same stadium, so the distance to their closest opponent is 0 miles, right? So a lot of teams have closer opponents than what the Blazers have to deal with the Sacramento Kings being their closest opponent. That's just wild when you think about it, right? I think I did the math on this one time, and it was if you take the distance from a team to their closest road opponent, the 16 teams with the shortest amount traveled all together don't equal the distance between Portland and Sacramento. For instance, if you're a member of the Chicago Bulls, you only have to travel 90 miles to play the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, that's Portland to Eugene. It's nothing. That's nothing. Nah, Blazers, no. You can't even get on a bus. All these other teams get to take bus trips. Not the Blazers. Everything's a plane ride. That's why I also want the Sonics back. I want to be able to take in a road game up in Seattle, do a quick little drive up I-5, make sure the passport's correct, maybe cross over into Vancouver and when they get a team, because heck, they deserve a team too. I know they squandered the Grizzlies the first time, but Vancouver, a much different city. Beautiful place if you've ever been to it. They deserve a team too. Lessen the Blazers' travel, bring back a little Pacific Northwest rivalry action. Can you switch names? Can you just give the name back too? Because Grizzlies makes far more sense for Vancouver than Memphis. Sometimes these teams should just change their name when they move. Kudos to Oklahoma City. Not for stealing Seattle's basketball team, but for changing their name when they did. Right? Even the Lakers. The Lakers, it makes no sense. They were in Minneapolis. They were in Minnesota, the land of 1,000 lakes. Lakers. That makes sense. A lake in LA? Not a lot of those. Utah Jazz? Utah. Salt Lake City. Known for its jazz music. Come on. Change your name. It's also one of the biggest travesties in sports is New Orleans losing the Jazz name and that color scheme. If you've ever been to New Orleans, you walk through New Orleans, it's purple, it's yellow, it's green. That's the color. That's everywhere. That's the Mardi Gras beads. It's just the color of the town, man. And they lost it. Utah Jazz. What's a Jazz in Salt Lake City? Heaven forbid the Blazers ever move. The Nashville Trailblazers. What? The Louisville Trailblazers. Change the name. Just do it. You're gonna have the Las Vegas Athletics, who were once the Oakland Athletics, who were once the Philadelphia Athletics, right? Just change the name. Change the name. That way, when you get a team back, you can have your name back too, right? So when Seattle gets a team, they can have the Sonic name back. That's beautiful. But if Vancouver gets a team, you're like, dang it. Grizzlies is taken. Now we got to find a different name. Oh, the Vancouver Yeti. Vancouver Eagle. I don't know. Vancouver Canadians, right? Just steal what every other Vancouver team is. Just change the name. It's not that hard. Do it. That's my rant on team names. Still don't know what they're going to name that WNBA team, though. Shout out to my daughter, though. She wanted to know if Rainbows won yet. She's like, did my name get officially entered, and did it win? Not yet, Pay. They haven't even got that far. But pay attention. What is it? The first week of December, the Golden State Valkyrie will be doing their expansion draft, so you get an idea of how the expansion draft will work in the WNBA. Off the top of my head, off of reading it, I believe it was they get to protect 6 players. They can't pick more than 2 players who are have expiring deals or something like that. A lot goes into it, but expansion draft coming up, team names, all sorts of stuff. But it is 5 o'clock, and I've just wasted time by not getting to the big story of the day, which is what we usually do at 5. And I think if you're looking at the big story of the day, I think the big story of the day is what's happening in, 5 days now in Eugene. That is on Saturday. Ohio State coming to town. Number 2 Buckeyes against the now, once again, number 3 Oregon Ducks after the craziness that was college football this weekend. And you get the very first top 3 matchup in Autzen Stadium history. I will tell everyone I keep hearing people say it like Ohio State making their very first trip to Autzen. That's not true. That's not true. The second game ever played in Autzen was against the Buckeyes in 1967. The first game ever played in Autzen Stadium was against Colorado, for those of you keeping score. The first win was against Idaho, and it was the only win in Autzen that year, if my memory serves me. I was still 19 years away from being born, but my memory, steel trap. Once it's in there, doesn't go away. But Ohio State making the trip, 2 top 3 teams. Last time you've had a game this big with these two teams this highly ranked was, 2007? When different polls say different things, but going by what ESPN has posted, that's your number 4 Arizona State and number 5 Oregon. Now, I think Oregon, the rankings they used, according to Matt Prem, who posted it, was the number 6 Arizona State. But don't know if you're using the AP or the BCS, whatever you're using. Don't know. But point is, 2 teams this highly ranked don't tend to clash in Autzen that often. You've had highly ranked USC come to town, but Oregon wasn't that highly ranked. You've had high-ranked Cal, and Oregon wasn't that high-ranked. You've had high-ranked Oregon versus unranked other teams. But 2 top 3 teams coming in, boy, that's a clash. And that's going to be one of the crazier, more raucous stadium environments I can probably remember at Autzen. It better be loud, especially when tickets cost $500. I'm excited. That's the big story. College game day. Undefeated Oregon, undefeated Ohio State. Get the popcorn ready because it's going to be must-see college football TV. And craziness is going to happen, I'll tell you that. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, the voice of the Trailblazers, Travis Demers, joins us, talk all things Trailblazers on the Rip City Drive. Welcome back into the Roof Seat Drive. Chris Burkhardt here filling in for Chad Doing today. And now I am pleased to welcome in friend of the show, my good friend, the voice of the Trailblazers, Travis Demers. Travis, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Chris. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. And I don't even know where to start with you because for your sports fandom, there's a lot going on. I'm looking at the TV right now. Your Yankees are playing, looking to try to take a 2-0 series lead. But before I get to that, what about that roller coaster of emotions on Sunday? Have you ever watched your team give up a 100-yard fumble recovery and then end a game with a blocked field goal? I know the answer is no, but what do you think about your Giants on Sunday?
The thing that I thought about a couple of years ago, that just good enough to not move on from Joe and be stuck with him for a while. They should be a playoff team. They're not a playoff team, but they're not going to be bad enough to get a top pick. It's enjoying the wins, I guess, when they come. They finally have a decent offensive line. They got a stud receiver, even though he wasn't there yesterday. And really, like, as thrilled as I am to see the Giants win that game, I am really feeling for Seahawks fans for losing to the Giants.
Yes, just good enough to keep Daniel Jones around. That's painful. And then on the baseball side of things, your Yankees, man, they're good. I think like every team, they have holes, man. But how are you feeling here against this series and the chances at a World Series?
I think they got a good chance in this series. It always helps when you get game one, right? But Cole didn't pitch great yesterday. What is it? The first game in baseball playoff history that had 5 lead changes. So the bats were coming up, but it also wasn't the key guys that were coming up with the big plays yesterday. So I don't know. I don't think anybody is the best team. So. The Yankees, or if they play Cleveland, Detroit, especially the way Scooble's been pitching, I think it's pretty wide open. So, it's been 15 years, which for some teams they wish it had been 15 years, but for the Yankees, that's a long time. So I'm just I am more hopeful and optimistic this year than I have been in some other years.
Yeah, well, they're better than my Red Sox, so you're welcome. That's all I got. It's terrible. But hey, Travis, really though, the things are about to kick into high gear for you. You got the first preseason game coming up on Friday in Seattle against the Clippers. Handful of those, and then you got the first homestand of the year. You get going. What are your thoughts about the team this year? There's still some unknowns, but still some excitement with the young guys and watching them progress. What are your vibes and your feeling going into this season?
Well, just from what I've seen from training camp and practice so far, there is a different energy this year, which is good. It was necessary, but there's a different energy. There is a different level of competitiveness, and Joe Cronin and Chauncey Billups have talked about it, that right now nothing is a given, nothing's a guaranteed. So the even guys that got minutes last year, they're going to have to compete for their spots, and you could see it. So I think that's a good sign that we're seeing the competitiveness that we are. The tough part is, what does the big picture of this team look like? And in order to know the answer to that, you need to know who Scoot Henderson is as a player. You need to know who Shaden Sharp and Donovan Clingan and Tumani Kamara and these young guys, who they are as players. I think we have a pretty good idea of Anthony Simons, although there is still room for improvement for him, and he still will improve. But really, I think a lot of it is figuring out what you have before you can figure out where you go. Because is Scoot going to be an all-star? Is Scoot going to be a role player? And until you know the answer to that question, you can't really construct the roster in the way that you want. So I think that's what this year really is determining what you have with a lot of those guys.
In that kind of vein, like, do you think that the sooner you determine that kind of determines where the season can go? I mean, I'm getting the comments on social media right now, and people saying, "Oh, capture the flag," and this and that. But the tough part about that for me is just like any draft, like your draft position is not guaranteed. Things can happen. There's a lottery. I mean, you tanked for Wemby, that didn't happen. So if you figure out what you got in Scoot and Shea and two, can that change the perspective from this front office, whether you think the draft is a viable way or maybe trades and free agency is the way?
No, I don't think anything's going to change that this year. I mean, look, I don't like the whole, let's chase draft picks, because like you said, nothing's guaranteed. And if you think about it, even if you went 0-82, you still only have a 14.5% chance of getting Cooper Flagg. Like, is that worth it? No, but at the same time, you have to build through the draft. You have to be able to get that guy in the draft. And if that's the first pick, if that's, Bailey, if it's Harper or Edgecombe or whoever one of these top picks are, I think you've got a really good chance of getting one of those guys. Is one of those guys at point guard? Yeah. Does that, change how you might approach things in June? Sure, it does. But I think that the most anxiety that the front office and the fan base is going to have is on lottery night.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'm with you. I just find it tough because on paper, I mean, you look at some of the names and like this team can win games, and I won't be surprised when they do win a handful of games. But at the same time, understanding which direction you want to go and how to get there, it's a tough pill to swallow for some. Because there's fans who don't like the idea of being bad again, but that's just kind of what comes with the territory building through the draft, which is, I think, like you said, it's the correct way to do it, right?
Well, I mean, think about it. Look at the teams that have tried to do it other ways, okay? Whether it's the Clippers or now, obviously, the Clippers and the Nets and some of these other teams, they tried to build that super team thing. And it didn't work for those teams, right? It worked for Boston, but they already had the foundation in place when they won a championship, 16 years ago. It worked for Miami, but they already had won a championship. They already had Dwayne Wade. Golden State built their team through the draft and then added some pieces. But you look at teams that have, tried to, do it the other way. Maybe Houston gets better, but, Houston is not a great team. They certainly aren't a championship caliber team. Oklahoma City, I know everybody looks at the Thunder and say, aha, that is the blueprint right there. But they got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is arguably one of the top 3, 4, 5 players in the league, is an MVP candidate, in a trade. You think they knew he was going to pop like that? You think the Clippers knew? And of course not. If the Clippers knew, they wouldn't have traded him and like the next 37 years of picks for Paul George. They would have held up to him. So there is definitely some luck involved in there. There is some development involved in there. But for every team, it's different. And sure, you could go get you could make a trade, but you have to give something up to make a trade. And the odds that you're going to give up something that nets you an MVP candidate, even if it's 3, 4, 5 years down the line as that player develops it, it's probably not going to happen. And we know that free agency is not the avenue this team is going to use to build a championship contender. So it's got to be the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Joined now by Travis Demers, your voice of the Trailblazers. You guys are all familiar with him. I'm sitting in a chair he's very comfortable in. He's sat in this one before. I'm glad he's here talking to me now. We're talking Trailblazers because preseason is just a few days away. And one thing I want to get your vibe on, Travis, is you talk about the vibes being different in a good way. And one thing I noticed at Media Day that I thought was really encouraging and telling about kind of where the team is going and how leadership is kind of steering the ship is, I think, Donovan Clingan, right? You draft him, you already have DeAndre Ayton, you have Robert Williams. I think you have every reason for maybe DeAndre Ayton to be salty, right? And you drafted a guy at my position, what the heck? Yet there's like a little budding friendship, a little bromance going on between those two. It's almost as if Ayton has kind of taken him under his wing and found ways to teach him the game. What's your read on those two, and more specifically, Ayton, who was kind of a ball of energy at Media Day?
Yeah, I mean, Ayton just is that kind of guy. And did he get a bad rap in Phoenix? Yeah, maybe. Was some of that warranted? Maybe. But in my time being around DA, he's a guy that is very well liked. He's one of the most well liked guys on the team. He's got a lot of energy. Can he be? I mean, he's a professional athlete. He's got an ego. They all do. We all do.
Right.
So there's absolutely some of that in there. But what impressed me the most about DA was the last 10, 15 games of the year last season, when he was really the only veteran in the lineup. And not only did he not pout, he went out there and he was an example. And that guy, that was a leader for young players, for guys that were injured, to say, I'm not too good to be out here playing with rookies and 10-day guys and things like that. To me, that spoke volumes about his potential as a person, and not just what he can do on the floor. So I was really impressed with what he was able to do in that situation. I also think that says a lot about Chauncey Billups. So I think there is a lot with DeAndre Ayton that is really important to this team, that's beyond dunks, blocks, and 10-foot jumpers.
Yeah, and that stuff matters, especially when you got a young team, that locker room leader type. And I also always heard from people in Phoenix that he wanted to be more of that leader, just wasn't allowed that in Phoenix because of just the chemistry of that team. And I think it's allowed him to open up in Portland a little bit, which is great. Now, also on the court,
Chris,
Travis.
let me ask you this, Chris. Chris, let me ask you this, though. I'm making an analogy for you. You've got little kids. I don't know if they have cousins that might be a little bit older, or if they have younger cousins. Like, that cousin who's like the youngest in their family, but then they get around your kids who are younger and they really thrive on being the cool older cousin.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is part of what's in Ayton's DNA.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great analogy. It almost puts the kid in the comfort zone, right, where they just like that moment and they get to be themselves, and people gravitate to them being themselves. They don't have to be anything they're not. I think that's a great analogy. And again, we've seen it play out because he's been a ball of energy, which is great. Now at Media Day, when it comes to Ayton and Donovan Clingan, Coach Billups was talking about how you got a lot of pieces, you got a lot of bigs that need to get time, and talked about how maybe you could see Ayton and Clingan on the floor at the same time, or Clingan and Dwop Reith and the versatility they offer. So my question to you, having seen more of Ayton than just about anybody, is do you think that he can play on the floor with Clingan? I mean, maybe like a power forward spot next to the defensive guy of Clingan, and still find versatility within the offense?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that, and you think about it, and like, okay, well, Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, they at first it was terrible, and they got to the conference finals. Now they're obviously broken up, but Dwop and DA and Clingan and DA, they're very different players, right? And obviously, I haven't seen a ton of Donovan Clingan, but Clingan can stretch the floor a bit. He's working on it. He didn't take a ton of threes in college, but we certainly know that Dwop Reith can stretch the floor a bit. So it's not like you have two players who play the same game who are going to be on the floor together clogging up the paint. Defensively, I think they're going to have to figure out where to be, because there are definitely some positional things that you need to figure out there on that end of the floor. But, why not? Why not try things out? Why not expand players' versatility? Because we don't know what, the roster is going to look like in 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and maybe there's another big that Clingan has to play on the floor with, and this experience he's going to get this year playing with Ayton is going to help him down the line. So it can't hurt to experiment.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll see what happens there. And next question for you, Travis, and it's totally okay if you want to be diplomatic and not have an answer. But with this team and so many young guys and a lot of guys who even last year you saw a ton of improvement from game 1 to game 82, I want to know if there's a player on this roster that you are specifically excited for or anxious to see hit the floor this preseason to see what type of improvements they've made.
Well, I think you really can say it about most of the team, to be honest with you. I mean, I've heard a lot about Tuana Kamara and his growth this offseason. What does that look like? Does that mean he's a mid-30s% three-point shooter? And if he is, that's scary because his defensive ability, and now you allow him with that length to be a true 3-and-D guy, that is as invaluable as a player as you're going to find. Obviously, Scoot certainly is the big one, right? And down the stretch of last season, he was a much better shooter. I want to see if the turnovers are going to come down. Can he be that point guard, that pure point guard style guy? And, with Shaedon Sharpe, we didn't see him for so much last year. Now we're not going to see him again for a little bit. Can he take over games? But I think you can answer that question with most of the roster, really.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I do kind of lean to Tamani because, man, if he gets the offense rolling as good as his defense was last year, he's sky can be the limit for that guy. But there's a lot of guys I'm excited for, Jabari Walker being another one. So, yeah, you're right. A lot of young guys, a lot of potential. That's going to be fun. All right, final question for you is I've seen your prep book, right? Your book of notes. And if people haven't, I'm sure you posted, it's insane the amount of notes you take and you're ready to go. So my question then is, how much harder is it for you in a preseason game versus a regular season game? Because, I mean, in the regular season, your Blazers 15-man roster, but in the preseason, you got a bunch of guys who are on your training camp deals who are going to get – is the preseason harder for you because you got to do so much extra research on so many other players?
Yes and no. Like, it is because, like you said, during a regular game, I can fit like 14 players on my chart, and you generally know who you can leave off because someone is hurt or something like that. But now you have to prep for the entire team, and depending on the team, that's 18, 19, 20, 21 players. So there is a lot more work. At the same time, though, you've got more time, so I can have everything prepped out like days ahead of time because I'm not worrying about keeping stats up to date and things like that. So it's a little easier to work ahead, which is definitely helpful. And then you play a team from Germany and recognize one or two players on the team, and that's when it's like, okay, now I got to do like the full research. I can't, use my template from last year because I don't have a template from last year on this team. And fortunately, they only have 13 guys in their roster.
Well, I do want to give you a compliment handed down to you from a listener. You may not have been tuning in the other day, but we had a listener call in, Travis, and talk about the TV presentation. And they weren't complaining about the TV presentation. They were just saying it's hard to listen to as a visually impaired fan because, again, Calabro has the screen, right? So he doesn't have to paint the picture as much as you do. And this particular listener gave you a ton of props for your ability to paint the picture for a visually impaired listener. And I think that might be something that maybe you don't think about all the time. You think about painting the picture, but literally someone who can't see that picture wanted to give you props for painting it for him.
I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the listener. So if you're listening, thank you. But I do think about that. And I think about, when I was a kid and my parents would make me turn the TV off, and that the only way that I could, follow the game was by listening to the radio. And, whatever game, whatever sport I was listening to, having the picture painted for me, like that's what made me want to do this. And I do think about that. I was, I'm 12 years old and I'm watching the radio like it's the 1930s. And, that visual and being able to get that from a broadcaster, that was kind of my motivation. I do think about that a lot.
Well, that's awesome. You do a great job. Travis, thanks for joining in. Cannot wait to hear you paint the picture on Friday.
Appreciate you, brother. I miss working, so I'm looking forward to it too.
Well, he's looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. And I know Rip City is looking forward to it too. That was Travis Demers. The music's on. We're going to hit the break. When we come back, we're going to hand out some high fives here on the Rip City Drive. All right. Are we back? I didn't hear any music. Throw me off. That's how this works now? Do an entire show, and then you got to curveball. Curveball. It's because I'm watching baseball. It's nothing but fastballs. Throw a curveball. I need Jobu. Where is he at? There it is. All right, now we'll hand out a high five. Woo! Woo! Threw the fastball at me. Curveball got me. Came back with a changeup. I was ready for it. Only a single, though. Didn't hit a home run. Shout out Mike Oakes. Keep me on my toes. All right, it is time for high fives. This one's pretty easy. I don't know if they're listening, but my high five goes out to Brooklyn Burkhart, my middle child, for losing her first tooth today. She gets a high five. That's right. She was last night. She was asking, Dad, can you help me? And I was trying. You're the one. It's like, oh, it's almost there. And she was doing the little kid thing. She was freaking out. And I was like, it's okay. We'll just give it a day. We'll give it a day. We'll see what happens. Then she was messing with it today. Mom told her, go in the bathroom and mess with it. I called her. I was like, hey, just wiggle it. It'll make it more and more loose, and it'll help. And she's like, okay. So she did that. She's still getting nervous. And then apparently she walked out and she's like, hey, Mom, watch this. Look how far my tooth will move if I just push it with my tongue. And she pushed it, and her tooth fell onto the floor. So shout out to her. She lost her first tooth today. She is excited because the tooth fairy is going to make a stop at the house now. Tell you what, when you're a kid and you got those loose teeth, that could be a scary thing. So shout out to Brooklyn. You got my high five. Couple more minutes left in the show. Where are we going to go from here? We got through of all our football talk, and a big shout out to Travis Demers for joining the show. I know that he's excited for the season to start, and I'm excited for the season to start. I mean, man, these things are the off season seems super, super long and then super short at the same time. It's pretty wild how it all works. But here we are on almost the eve of preseason basketball. Travis is getting ready. You got the Clippers up in Seattle on Saturday, and then the regular season will be here before you know it, just a few weeks away. We got a comment from the farmer's daughter in the chat. Want to know how much does a tooth fairy pay these days? And I don't know. I don't. The bank accounts and inflation. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to talk to her. She's sneaky. She comes in, she drops money, she leaves. I never catch her, no matter how hard I try. But I don't know what the exact numbers are. Gotta go to economics class and figure that one out. My wife is cracking me up because apparently my daughter doesn't think that's a funny story. She is listening. I thought it was a cute story, Brooklyn. Telling the world you lost your first tooth. That's awesome. It's awesome. That's good. You're growing up. Keep it up. All right. The music means it's time to go. I've had fun. Thanks to Dwight for being here for the first hour. Thanks to Travis Demers for joining the show. And thanks to you for listening. Chad will be back tomorrow. Of course, you'll have Justin and Brendan in the morning from 6 to 9. And then the Rip City Drive right back here. Same bat channel from 3 to 6. You guys have been awesome. Thanks for listening. Go enjoy this weather because, my goodness, it's beautiful.